We have just got back from the Jack the Ripper Museum in London. Normally £12 to get in, but we got a little bit of concession. We did book it online, and of course I have wheelchair, so we had to do that. It wasn't actually wheelchair accessible throughout. The doors were very narrow, and I've got a wide backside, so we struggled with the wheelchair getting through those. And also getting into the actual shop, there was a step, so James had to lift me in. Everything else I could access was really interesting, lots of photographs. It was over how many floors, James?
4 floors of exhibition, then a basement, so 5 floors. And then your ground floor is where the shop is.
Yeah, they had the shop on the... shop was on the ground floor. Then she makes you go 1, 2, 3, 4 first, and then right down to the basement where they've got the morgue set out. And they always warn you, these are where the photographs are of the women when they were in the morgue. Quite gruesome, but as soon as we've been following Jack the Ripper around Whitechapel this weekend, we thought we'd just finish it with that. Yes, so check out the pictures. Do be aware that there are a couple of gory ones. I'm sure you've seen them all before online anyway. What do we give it out of 10? Well, you certainly don't need an hour to walk around it, do you?
No. It's good, it's just pricey for what it is.
Yeah, maybe give it a 7. Like I say, accessible was a problem. You can do it as fast or as slow as you want. You're going to give it a 6.
Yeah.
And they had some artifacts from the actual policeman who found Catherine Eddowes' body, so the first one found. The truncheon and the whistle, so it was, and his notebook as well, was some of the things. His handcuffs as well. So some of the things that he actually had. So that makes it a little bit more interesting. So 6 for James and a 7 for me. Have a look at them, see what you think. When we arrived, we were greeted by a really friendly lady who knew a lot about the museum, and she gave us a leaflet to look at, which was really useful. It tells you exactly what you're going to be looking at on each floor. As you can see from the photograph, it was a very small shop. The first floor was representing Mitre Square on the 30th of September 1888, the most notorious day in Ripper history. In front you can see the 2 waxwork figures. One is Catherine Eddowes and one is Police Constable Watkins, who discovered her body. You'll see a worker's cart under the streetlights, and carts like this were used to move the bodies of the murdered women to the morgue. One of the morgues used to store Jack the Ripper's victims was only a street away from the museum. And on the wall you can see a replica of the original graffiti that was left at the murder scene. On the second floor is Jack the Ripper's sitting room. Here we see how Jack might have lived and where he planned his crimes. You can read newspaper clippings written in 1888 which chart the progress of the serial killer's hideous crimes. And hanging over the fire you can see an original drawing by Jack the Ripper prime suspect Walter Snicket. Is she sleeping, or is there something more sinister going on? On the table you will find medical instruments, poison, drug bottles and a skull belonging to the killer. And at the desk, medical books on surgery and the letter addressed from hell, which might have been written by Jack. The third floor was made up to look like the police station. Here you'll find all the evidence and profiles of the suspects. A crime board shows the sites of the murders and the evidence the police collected. And in a display case is the actual whistle Police Constable Watkins blew to call for help when he found Catherine Eddowes' mutilated body in Mitre Square. You can also see Constable Watkins' notebook, handcuffs and truncheons he was carrying that day. It's one of the rarest ripperologist collections of recent times. By the desk is a waxwork of Chief Inspector Aberline, the detective in charge of leading the hunt for the Ripper in 1888. The fourth floor was the victim's bedroom. Jack the Ripper's victims would have lived in rooms just like this one in one of London's most poverty-stricken areas. There's a tiny metal bed with a straw mattress, as that's all the women could afford. Gin was often a drink of choice, with a bottle costing a few pence. There's a few rare photographs of the victims on the wall, and in the display case are original Victorian bonnets, which would have been worn by some of the women. So we next went down into the basement, which was made to look like the mortuary, and they recommend you need to be 16 years or older to go through it. On the walls, you'll see original autopsy photographs of the horrific murders, which some people will not like to look at. To accompany each of the photographs of the women were the name, the day they died, and then the autopsy report as well. The museum has added another 2, which you'll see by the year was after the canonical 5, but because of the way they were killed, they're definitely possibles. The body of Elizabeth Stride was taken to the parish mortuary of St George in the East. The building, which was once a chapel, is not too far from the museum. These women mostly drunk around the Whitechapel area, including the 10 Bells pub and the White Hart. James and I visited most of the pubs on our night out. was very enjoyable. Beautiful buildings, very ornate with stained glass windows. However, back then I don't think they would have been looking at the decor. They were just wanting to know where they could get their next gin from. Next photograph is the goriest of the lot. Very gruesome, very angry person who was stabbing her. I like to remember her from the Johnny Depp film From Hell.